All right, everyone, there's a link in the description to a very funny tweet by Donald Trump, and this is literally, top news for the day. And I'm going to read it to you, for those of you that don't use Twitter, can't be bothered, which is most of you. Twitter's not as popular as it once was, thankfully. This is from Donald Trump himself. Now the press is trying to sell the fact that I wanted a moat stuffed with alligators and snakes, with an electrified fence and sharp spikes on top at our southern border. I may be tough on border security, but not that tough. The press has gone crazy. Fake news. Now, one thing that this, I think, references is the fact that people expected that the Trump wall that was going to be built would be like a 30-foot tall, 20-foot wide stone barrier, like a medieval fortification with a moat, like in the literal sense. That was the meme about it. That was like, from the election itself, from Trump's own fans, but it was never actually going to happen. It was never even proposed. The idea that a wall has to be opaque and thick and unwieldy and expensive to build as opposed to modern fortification itself never made any sense. Like, it was funny. It was funny to see people who were leftists pretending to be Trump fans, as well as leftists goading on actual Trump fans, rambling about how the wall that he finally settled on, the prototypes that were built down in Southern California, the one he finally chose, it's a fence, it's not actually a wall. Well, the fence around your property probably is not 30 feet high and made of 2-foot thick, reinforced steel, but I guess you could say that. If you think that the existence of slits in between the individual components of the wall makes it a fence, you're free to believe that. But I mean, it's a little bit different than the double width chain link that guards most of our border. A large proportion of our border wall being a very loose term in these cases, is nothing more than a vehicle barrier of barbed wire with some metal poles. And that's basically it. You can walk over it. There are other spots where it's a little more than a chain link fence with a road and then another shorter chain link fence with some razor wire at the top to try to slow people down so that they can get detained. It obviously doesn't work because there are many millions of people in the country illegally. The fact is that when the Democrats say, well, a lot of those people just overstayed visas, they didn't climb over the border. Absolutely. Separate issue. That's an issue of the visa process. That's an issue of security at our airports and ports and things like that. But when we're talking about the border, we're talking about how many people, what proportion of them walked across the border. It's millions of people. It's a problem that we can solve. It's not even that expensive to solve it. Trump has proposed this. He's got the money. He's building the wall as we speak. New wall is going up now, finally. Up until then, for the most part, up until the last month, it was retrofitting old existing barriers. It was replacing some of the low-tech crap at the border with something more sophisticated. Doesn't technically count as building new wall. He got like 50 miles actually completed in southern Texas, and that's all that the initial budget allowed. But now he's got the Pentagon money. He's already secured hundreds of miles of border. It's going up. The idea that it would ever have a moat and electric fence and stuff like that was never going to happen. It's funny to talk about. It's like, when you say, well, if I was king of the country, how would I solve the southern border wall problem? And, you'll see people suggest 100-foot high stone wall, a 50-foot deep pit with bungee sticks at the bottom, snake pits and lava and, dumping Minecraft lava bucket on the border or something. It's funny stuff. It was never actually going to happen, though. It wouldn't be cost effective. It wouldn't make sense. Also, it would be less effective than the wall that's going up as we speak. The ability for Border Patrol to see through it to the other side, kind of important. The fact is that this barrier is much, much more affordable than other things that could be made. The idea of making a cement embankment, things like that, would be cost prohibitive. Congress would rightfully balk at spending that kind of money. They balked at spending the few billion that this expansion of our wall will cost. This will help to defend our border. It's also a testament to the legacy media's nonsense, because the legacy media is constantly talking about how Trump does believe these things. This isn't even technically hyperbolic. They've said stuff like this about him. They've said stuff like this about the president on multiple occasions, that he has weird beliefs and that he's ignorant and doesn't know what he's doing, and so he envisions all of these odd things actually being feasible. But you've never actually, in any of these cases, had it come from Trump himself, except in a joking, obviously hyperbolic context. Every other time, it's some anonymous whistleblower or leaker or whatever. Some anonymous White House official swears that Donald Trump thought that geese could actually be genetically engineered to lay golden eggs to solve the budget problem or something like that. And there are people who, no matter how weird and out there the claim is, will believe it was actually said in private. Proof? Who needs it? Evidence? Ha! Who fucking needs that shit? Nobody does. They don't ask for it because they got Trump derangement syndrome really, really bad. Feel sorry for him. You know, really tough time for people who don't like Donald Trump. Look at what just happened to Bernie Sanders. So now the front runner and Sanders have health issues. Elizabeth Warren's nuts. Where's the fuck? It couldn't be worse for the Democrats right now. Big news of the day, of course, being Bernie Sanders. Suffering from angina, having emergency heart operation at 77 or 78 or whichever he is. Wonderful times for the Democratic Party. No, Trump's not dumb. He knows you can't build an alligator pit and a snake moat and stuff. Well, you could. Okay, let's being feasible in the flat parts of the southern border. If you really wanted to, you could dig a canal in from the ocean and build a moat. You could theoretically do that. Would it be feasible? Would it make sense? No. I mean, not even remotely. You could build a U.S.-Mexico canal to replace the Panama Canal if you really wanted to. It's just that it wouldn't make any goddamn fucking sense at all. It would, yeah, $10 trillion later, we can admit canoes cross-continent for considerably more than they could just fucking go to Panama or supposedly in the future Nicaragua, but that'll never happen. It'd be so funny. I'm trying to imagine, we're going to have an actual medieval wall. It'll be literally like towers and crenellations and arrow slits and everything else, and it'll be impenetrable and 20 feet thick, and it'd look good. It'd definitely be a tourist attraction, at least at spots that weren't overrun by graffiti. By the way, scrubbing the graffiti off of it would be a problem, don't you think? Literally, that alone would eat up a lot of resources of the U.S. and Mexican governments if it were more of a solid structure. Of course, you can do all sorts of cool pixelation effects now because it'll actually have openings between it. The openings are only a few inches wide, by the way. They're not going to squeeze human beings through it. Some people have, I guess, worried about that. Well, what? Some really thin Mexican dude is just going to squeeze through the border wall with a little bit of KY jelly. No, I don't think so. I think it'd be easier involving Pete Buttigieg with such an adventure. That's about all. Peace out.